I never thought that a single day could change the entire trajectory of my life. My name is Armin, and until recently, I was living what I considered a normal, comfortable life as a husband in a quiet suburban neighborhood. My wife, Sana, is kind, meticulous, and she has always been a perfectionist in the way she manages our home. I loved her for it, though truthfully, I often found myself frustrated by the little details she would obsess over: the perfect alignment of cushions, the exact temperature of the water, the precise timing of our routines. I thought of these things as quirks until the day it all turned upside down. It started with a small argument, something trivial really. I had been tired from work, barely wanting to move, but she had a list of chores that she wanted done immediately. I shrugged it off, joking about how I'd done enough, but she didn't laugh. Instead, she looked at me with a calm that was frighteningly resolute and said, "If you can't manage this like a partner, maybe you should learn what it truly takes." I laughed nervously, thinking she was joking, but the look in her eyes told me otherwise. There was no malice, just unwavering certainty, and somehow that made it worse. The next morning, I woke to find the house in a peculiar state. Every piece of furniture had been rearranged, every surface polished until it gleamed. Even the kitchen counters, which I would have sworn I had left clean, were spotless to an almost absurd degree. And then came the note. It was short and formal, almost military in tone, and yet the handwriting was unmistakably hers. "Today, you will experience life from the other side. You will dress, move, and act as I instruct. Only then will you understand." I blinked at it, thinking it was a joke, but something in the air felt ominous, as if the house itself was watching me, waiting. I hesitated, my mind racing with embarrassment and confusion. "Dress and act as you instruct," I muttered aloud. The idea was absurd. Yet, the sound of her heels clicking down the hallway was unmistakable, and when she appeared, she held a uniform of sorts, not a maid's uniform exactly, but close enough to trigger a deep, uncomfortable awareness in me that this was serious. It was pristine, perfectly pressed, and shockingly small. I could see immediately that it wasn't meant for a man. Sana didn't speak. She simply handed it to me, and I noticed her eyes held a mixture of amusement and something I could not quite name: discipline, perhaps, or satisfaction. I swallowed hard, feeling an unfamiliar wave of vulnerability. I had never seen myself in her clothes. Never imagined I would. But there was no room to protest. I picked up the outfit with trembling hands and stared at it, noticing the delicate lines, the fabric that seemed to be alive with the scent of cleanliness and her meticulous care. The moment I began to change, I felt something strange: an awkwardness at first, an unnatural tension in muscles that had never known to move like this. Each motion was deliberate, each step measured. My body felt foreign, and yet, strangely, every movement also felt awake. I caught a glimpse of myself in the mirror and didn't recognize the person staring back. My shoulders looked narrower, my hands smaller, my posture softer, almost delicate. The uniform clung to me in ways I didn't anticipate, accentuating curves I didn't know I had. A strange heat crept into my chest, a mixture of humiliation, fascination, and a growing sense of empathy. Sana watched quietly, correcting my posture, adjusting the sleeves, smoothing the fabric against my arms. She was exacting but gentle, and I could feel the weight of her expectations pressing into my consciousness. For hours, she guided me: how to walk, how to hold my hands, how to speak when answering her questions, how to bow slightly when presenting something. Each instruction chipped away at the man I had been that morning and molded me into someone completely new, someone fragile, attentive, and quietly obedient. The transformation went deeper than the surface. It wasn't just my appearance that shifted, it was the way I thought, the way I felt. I noticed myself observing the world differently, seeing the little things that had always frustrated me before but now felt important. Dust on the corners of tables seemed tragic, crumbs in the cracks of the floor unbearable. The weight of responsibility for maintaining the household settled on my shoulders like a tangible cloak. I began to understand what it meant to run a home with precision, patience, and care. And with each small task, I felt my identity unravel a little, replaced by a version of myself that moved quietly through space, anticipating needs before they were spoken. Sana didn't just instruct me physically. She questioned me, too, in subtle ways. Why had I ignored this? Why had I been careless here? Each query was a mirror reflecting my past negligence. And yet, there was no anger in her voice, only an insistence that I see and understand. At first, I resented her, burning with frustration at how thoroughly she had upended my world. But gradually, the resentment transformed into a strange gratitude. I began to see her not as an adversary but as a teacher, someone guiding me to a place I had never thought to explore. Days passed, though time became difficult to measure. Every morning, I donned the uniform. Every day I was assigned duties that tested my patience, my pride, and my endurance. I learned to dust, scrub, arrange, fold, polish, and serve with precision. I learned the language of the house, the subtle sounds of creaking floors, the correct alignment of objects, the importance of timing. Each success brought a quiet thrill, a new kind of pride that felt alien yet intoxicating. One evening, after a particularly grueling day, I collapsed onto the sofa, exhausted, covered in a sheen of sweat and the lingering scent of polished wood. Sana sat beside me, not saying anything, just letting the silence stretch. And then, softly, she spoke. "You're different now." Her words were not a compliment, nor a reprimand, they were an observation. And in that moment, I realized that the person I had been careless, impatient, dismissive had been replaced by someone who understood. Someone who could see the value in precision, in care, in attentiveness. Someone who could finally comprehend what it truly meant to manage a home and to honor the life we shared. The weeks that followed cemented the transformation. I became not just a husband, but a participant in every layer of our shared life, moving in harmony with Sana's expectations and discovering a side of myself I had never known. My appearance had changed permanently in subtle ways, the way I held myself, the way I moved, the way I responded to instruction, but it was the internal transformation that was most profound. I had become her maid in form and spirit, learning humility, discipline, and an empathy I had never experienced before. There were moments of self-doubt, moments when I longed for the old me, moments when the uniform felt like a cage. But those moments passed, leaving in their wake an understanding of partnership and responsibility that transcended traditional roles. I realized that the experiment Sana had forced upon me was not punishment, it was education, revelation, and ultimately, liberation. I had been trapped in my assumptions about gender, work, and value, and through this transformation, I discovered a fuller, richer identity that embraced attention, service, and care. Even now, I look at myself in the mirror and see traces of the man I once was, but the reflection is layered, more complex, infused with lessons learned through humility and transformation. I see hands that have become skilled at delicate work, a posture that communicates attentiveness, a face that carries both surprise and serenity. I see a husband who has been reshaped not by force but by understanding, by living the life of someone whose labor sustains, whose patience nurtures, whose attention is endless. Sana never boasted about her victory, she never relished my submission. But in the quiet of our home, in the glint of polished counters, the neatly folded laundry, the perfectly aligned furniture, I see her triumph not as dominance, but as revelation. She gave me the chance to see the world through her eyes, and in doing so, she gave me the chance to see myself anew. I am still Armin, but I am also someone entirely different, someone who has embraced a form of beauty, care, and attentiveness I could never have imagined. I am the husband who became her maid, and in that truth, I have found freedom, understanding, and a profound connection to the person I love most. The story is still unfolding, every day a continuation of the lessons learned, every moment an opportunity to move with grace, with care, and with humility. I have discovered that transformation is not just a change of appearance or role, it is a transformation of perception, identity, and heart. And in that transformation, I have finally understood what it truly means to be a partner, a helper, a companion, and, most unexpectedly, a reflection of someone's enduring care and meticulous love. Weeks turned into months, and the rhythm of my new life became both comforting and unsettling. I had learned the patterns of the house, memorized the ways Sana liked things arranged, the exact angle she preferred the cushions, the specific way the curtains were drawn to catch the evening light. Yet, even as I moved with precision, there was a part of me that felt like a visitor in my own skin, a stranger wearing familiarity like a costume. Some mornings, I would catch my reflection and be startled by how much I had changed: my shoulders narrower, my posture softer, my hands delicate in ways that still made me hesitate before reaching for anything too heavy. One evening, as I polished the living room floor for the third time that day, I heard a knock at the door. My heart skipped. We rarely had visitors. Sana peeked from the hallway and whispered, "It's your old friend, Faisal. He's come to check on you." I froze. Faisal had known me before any of this, before I had transformed into the version of myself that now served with quiet attentiveness. Panic twisted my stomach. What would he think? Could I even face him in this uniform, in this altered posture, in this new life? When Faisal entered, his eyes widened in surprise, though he masked it quickly with a laugh. "Arman, you've changed." His tone was teasing, but I felt the weight of his gaze. He circled me as if inspecting a piece of art. I wanted to explain, to justify, to tell him that it was Sana's idea, a test, an experiment, but words tangled in my throat. Instead, I moved automatically, offering him tea, arranging cushions, presenting snacks, all with a precision I didn't know I possessed. Faisal watched quietly, and for the first time, I noticed something in him: a flicker of doubt, perhaps even judgment. I realized that this new life was not only a test for me but for the way the world would see me. And suddenly, my home felt smaller, the walls closing in with the weight of performance. Yet, amidst the panic, there was also a strange pride, a secret knowledge that I could manage this, that I had learned skills and patience I had never possessed before. After he left, I found Sana standing by the window, hands clasped behind her back. "He'll need time," she said softly, as if reading my thoughts. "People fear what they don't understand. But you understand yourself now. That's what matters." I nodded, feeling the truth of her words like a warm current under my skin. She had guided me into a version of myself that could withstand scrutiny, judgment, and self-doubt. Then came the day that changed everything again. I was in the kitchen, polishing the silverware, when a letter slid under the door. No stamp, no return address, only my name in neat, unfamiliar handwriting. I hesitated before opening it, sensing the tension in the air. Inside was a note, short but chilling. "Are you truly yourself, or just the version she made you be?" My hands trembled. Who had sent this? Was it Faisal, playing a cruel joke, or someone else entirely? I couldn't tell. My mind spun, questioning everything I thought I knew about myself. Sana noticed my distress immediately. She took the letter, read it slowly, then looked at me with a calm that was almost frightening. "Arman, this is exactly why this journey matters. You have to decide: are you the man who resents change, or the one who embraces it?" Her words struck deep, slicing through layers of anxiety. I realized that the letter was not an attack, it was a reflection, a challenge, and the choice was mine. I could retreat, discard the transformation, and return to my old, comfortable arrogance, or I could continue this path and truly claim the lessons I had learned. That night, I sat by the window, uniform neatly folded beside me, and let the moonlight spill across the room. I thought of every detail, every adjustment, every moment of subtle guidance Sana had offered. I thought of the trembling hands, the awkward steps, the growing pride in small accomplishments. I thought of the fleeting glimpses of strength I had never known I possessed. And I made a decision. I would not hide from this version of myself. I would embrace it fully, not out of fear, but out of understanding. The following morning, I rose earlier than usual, slipping into the uniform with a sense of purpose I had never felt before. Each motion was deliberate, every task performed with mindfulness. When Sana appeared, she nodded, a quiet smile playing on her lips. "You're ready," she said simply. And I understood that readiness was not about perfection, but about acceptance, about the courage to move forward fully in a life that had reshaped me entirely. Weeks later, I was no longer merely the husband who became her maid, I was a partner in every sense, carrying lessons of patience, empathy, and attentiveness into every corner of our life. Friends and family began to notice subtle changes, the careful arrangement of the house, the precision in our routines, and the new calm in my demeanor. Some whispered about the transformation, others smiled knowingly, sensing the quiet power in this new balance. But no matter the external perception, I knew the truth. I had become someone capable of both care and humility, someone whose identity was no longer tied to ego, but to understanding. One afternoon, as I dusted the shelves, Sana came behind me, her hands resting lightly on my shoulders. "You've grown in ways you didn't imagine," she whispered. I closed my eyes, letting her words sink in. She had guided me through a journey of reflection, discipline, and self-discovery, and now, I could see the fullness of it. The uniform no longer felt like a costume, it felt like a symbol, a reminder of the man I had become through humility, patience, and transformation. I realized then that life is not about resisting change, but about understanding it, accepting it, and letting it shape you into someone more complete. I am still Armin, still a husband, but I am also someone who knows the power of service, the beauty of attentiveness, and the quiet strength in humility. The husband who became her maid has become more than that, a reflection of love, discipline, and the subtle art of transformation that touches every corner of who I am. And as I stand in the quiet of our home, polishing, arranging, and moving with careful thought, I understand something I never did before. True strength is not in dominance, but in the courage to become something new, to embrace change, and to find identity not in who you were, but in who you have become. Months had passed since I first stepped into the uniform, and the rhythm of my life as Sana's assistant had become second nature. Yet, something unsettled me, an unease I couldn't quite name. It started subtly, with shadows in the corners of rooms, the creak of floorboards that didn't belong, the faint echo of voices when no one was there. At first, I thought it was imagination, the mind's response to living so completely in a new role, so completely transformed. But then came the small incidents that could not be dismissed. A vase slightly moved from its usual place, a drawer left open when I had been certain I had closed it, tiny scratches on the floor that were not from me. I mentioned none of this to Sana, though I knew she noticed. She observed my careful movements, my subtle glances over my shoulder, and she never asked directly. Her silence was both reassuring and terrifying. I began to wonder if she had orchestrated more than my transformation, if perhaps she had woven a layer of mystery into the house, a way to keep me alert, cautious, alive to the possibility that nothing was entirely under control. I found myself walking with more care, checking corners, listening for the smallest sound, feeling the weight of the uniform differently, as armor, as a shield, as a signal that I was both servant and sentinel. One evening, while preparing tea, I noticed a shadow move across the living room window. I froze, teacup trembling in my hands, heart pounding. I called Sana softly, but there was no answer. Stepping carefully toward the window, I saw nothing, only the garden bathed in moonlight. The air was still, too still, and yet I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. That night, I hardly slept. Every sound in the house seemed amplified, the rustle of curtains, the ticking of clocks, the faint hum of appliances. I realized then that transformation was not only about external change but about heightened awareness, about seeing life with a clarity I had never possessed. The next morning, I approached Sana cautiously, explaining what I had seen. Her response was calm, measured, and unnerving in its simplicity. "The house tests you as much as I do," she said. "You've grown in skill, but you must grow in vigilance too. The world is not always safe, and neither is comfort." Her words lingered long after she left the room, echoing in my mind. I understood that she was teaching me not only domestic mastery but also the subtle art of perception, the awareness of surroundings, and the ability to respond calmly to uncertainty. As the days continued, I discovered small, hidden responsibilities I had never imagined. Keys to certain cabinets, codes for the alarm system, ways to anticipate visitors before they arrived. Sana was gradually turning the house into a test of both skill and intuition. Each day demanded more focus, more subtlety, more internal discipline. And as I rose to these challenges, I felt a strange exhilaration, not pride in the old sense, but a satisfaction rooted in mastery, in responsiveness, in the ability to meet expectations I had once dismissed. Then came the unexpected visitor, an inspector from a service company, who arrived unannounced to check the security system. I greeted him, hands steady, posture perfect, voice calm. As I guided him through the house, I noticed the way he studied me, the curious glance at the uniform, the subtle lift of an eyebrow. I felt the old embarrassment creeping in but pushed it aside, relying on the lessons Sana had taught me. By the end of the visit, he nodded, seemingly impressed, and left with a polite smile. Alone, I exhaled slowly, realizing that the transformation had given me more than domestic skill, it had given me confidence in situations I would once have found mortifying. Yet, despite progress, there remained a tension I could not dissolve. Some nights, as I polished the silverware or arranged the cushions, I caught myself staring into mirrors, wondering if the man I had been still existed somewhere beneath this refined exterior. Was Arman lost, or had he truly evolved into someone new? I tried to reconcile these questions, understanding that transformation was rarely linear or complete. There were layers, shadows, remnants of old habits coexisting with new ones, and it was in this tension that the real journey unfolded. Sana sensed this internal conflict. One afternoon, she guided me to the balcony and had me sit while she arranged a small bouquet of flowers in my hands. "Do you feel torn?" she asked softly. I nodded. "I do. Sometimes I feel like I'm wearing a mask, even when I've grown comfortable in it. Sometimes I wonder if the old me will ever return." She smiled faintly. "The old you doesn't need to return. It shaped the new you. Every version exists within you, but the one who serves, observes, and learns, that is who you are now. And that is enough." Her words were a revelation. I realized that identity is not fixed, it is layered, fluid, and ever-changing. I could carry past experiences, old habits, memories of who I was, and still embrace the new skills, perspectives, and empathy that my transformation had brought. I felt a profound sense of peace, mingled with the lingering thrill of responsibility. Weeks later, I found myself handling an emergency almost instinctively. A small fire had broken out in the kitchen while I was preparing dinner. Without thinking, I moved quickly, following the precise steps Sana had drilled into me, shutting off the gas, grabbing the fire extinguisher, guiding her to safety, ensuring pets were secure. By the time the fire was contained, I was shaking but relieved. Sana came to me, her expression unreadable for a moment, and then she laughed softly, a sound full of warmth and pride. "You handled that like I hoped you would," she said. "This is what it means to be fully present, fully aware, fully responsible." It dawned on me that transformation is not just about performing tasks, it is about cultivating presence, awareness, and resilience. I had become more than a husband, more than a helper, more than a reflection of someone else's expectations. I had become someone capable of action, judgment, and care in ways I had never imagined. The uniform, once a symbol of discomfort and submission, had become a badge of skill, awareness, and subtle power. As I stood alone that night, polishing the last piece of silverware, I looked around the house and felt a quiet triumph. Not a triumph of ego, but of growth. Not a triumph over anyone, but over my own limitations, fears, and assumptions. I had learned humility, patience, vigilance, and grace. I had learned to inhabit a new identity while honoring the old. I had become a husband who could serve, protect, and observe with skill and compassion. I had become her maid, and yet, paradoxically, I had become more fully myself than ever before. The transformation was complete, not in the sense of perfection, but in the sense of understanding, acceptance, and mastery. Every day since has been a continuation of lessons learned, challenges met, and identity explored. And in the quiet moments, when the house is still and the moonlight spills across the polished floors, I understand something profound. The greatest transformation is not in appearance or duty, but in the courage to embrace change, to accept guidance, and to discover who you truly are in the spaces between expectation and self-discovery. Months turned into a full year since the day Sana first handed me the uniform. By now, the rituals of the house had become second nature, but the emotional landscape was still evolving. I no longer felt awkward or restrained in the uniform. Instead, I moved with purpose, confidence, and a quiet grace that surprised even me. The reflection in the mirror no longer startled me, it reflected a man reshaped, tempered by patience, humility, and insight. One morning, as I arranged the cushions in the living room, I realized I hadn't felt fear, doubt, or embarrassment in days. Instead, I felt mastery, not of the household alone, but of myself. I had learned that identity is not a single, static thing, but a series of layers, each shaped by experience, reflection, and care. I could still remember who I had been, but that version no longer dominated me. The man who had resisted chores, dismissed details, and lived distracted by ego had been replaced by someone fully aware, fully present, and fully responsible. Sana watched me quietly, leaning against the doorway with her familiar calm smile. "You've grown far beyond what I expected," she said softly. "Not just in skill, but in understanding. You've become someone who can truly see the world as it is and care for it." I felt a warmth spread through me, not from pride, but from recognition. I had earned this acknowledgement, not as a reward, but as confirmation of the work I had done on myself. That afternoon, we hosted a small gathering for close friends and family. I moved through the house effortlessly, serving drinks, arranging plates, anticipating needs. Guests complimented the home, the organization, and even my composure. One friend leaned close to me and whispered, "Arman, you've changed, but in the best way possible." I smiled quietly, knowing that the transformation they saw was only part of the truth. The deepest changes were internal, less visible, but far more powerful. Later that evening, after everyone had left, I and Sana sat together on the balcony, the warm glow of the setting sun casting long shadows. "Do you miss the old you?" she asked gently. I thought for a moment, feeling the layers of identity I had carried over the past year. "Sometimes," I admitted. "But I understand now that the old me was necessary, but incomplete. I needed to change to see fully, to feel fully, to be fully present." She nodded, resting her hand lightly on mine. "And now you are." I realized then that the transformation had not only changed my skills or appearance, but it had reshaped the core of my being. I had learned patience, attention, empathy, and resilience. I had discovered that strength is not about dominance, but about care, that courage is not about assertiveness alone, but about willingness to change and adapt. The uniform, once a symbol of awkwardness and submission, had become a badge of growth, understanding, and quiet power. As night fell and we closed the blinds, I reflected on the journey, the small beginnings, the doubts, the challenges, the moments of fear, and the lessons of responsibility. I had been Arman, a husband unaware of what it truly meant to manage a home and care for a partner. I had become her maid, learning discipline, observation, and humility. And now, I was both fully myself, fully transformed, fully capable of loving, serving, and growing. The house was still, the chores complete, and yet life continued in its gentle, demanding rhythm. I understood finally that transformation is not a single event, but an ongoing process. It is the willingness to adapt, to observe, to reflect, and to embrace who we can become when guided by love, discipline, and insight. I am still Arman, but I am more. I am attentive, skilled, patient, and aware. I am the husband who became her maid, but I am also the man who chose to grow, who embraced transformation, and who found identity not in resistance, but in acceptance. And in that truth, I have discovered the deepest form of freedom, connection, and understanding, lessons that will stay with me for the rest of my life. The story does not truly end, because life never ends, and growth never stops. But the chapter of transformation has closed, leaving me stronger, wiser, and profoundly changed. I have walked through fear, awkwardness, and doubt, and emerged as someone who can face the world and myself with clarity, grace, and purpose. The husband who became her maid has learned the ultimate lesson, that true identity is not given, not fixed, but discovered, nurtured, and embraced with courage and humility.